We're on.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 5th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting. I'll chair the meeting tonight, Councillor McKenna. I'll start with our land acknowledgement. On January 5th, 2026, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and the water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. We do have regrets from Councillor Miller. Councillor McGuire has joined us virtually, as has Councillor Brennan. So the meeting is called to order, and I'll seek a motion to that the January 5th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda be approved as circulated. Moved by Councillor Quinn, seconded by Councillor Brennan. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. With that agenda in front of you, does anyone have any disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest? Seeing none. We have no approval of minutes. We have no delegations. Do we have any directors' reports, COS?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one report, a verbal report this evening from Director Clark.
Great. Welcome. Starting us off the year.
I was just thinking it's hard to believe it's 2026, which means that this is going into my 11th year in municipal government, which is my 25th year in management, which is impossible because I'm only 25. So I'm very confused. But anyway, Happy New Year, everyone. My director's report this evening pertains to the outdoor rink facility located at the Memorial Community Centre complex. The mayor advised me that there have been a number of comments on social media over the past weekend about the facility. I have not personally been privy to these comments. I haven't seen them. However, I have been apprised of the general context. First and foremost, I would like to publicly recognize and thank our operations team. I have been very privileged to work with a phenomenal group of individuals this last 18 months in particular. They've been working diligently, often under challenging winter conditions, cold, snow, and so on, and during a period of reduced staffing, most recently over the holidays. To maintain a wide range of community facilities safely and responsibly. The outdoor rink has been and continues to be part of that work, and I fully support the professionalism and judgment they have exercised in balancing safety, in particular, service delivery, and available resources. It is important to remember that outdoor rinks are, by their nature, weather-dependent community amenities. They do not operate under the same controlled, curated conditions as indoor facilities, and there will always be variability in surface quality depending on snowfall, such as what we're experiencing this evening, temperature, and timing. That does not mean the rink is being neglected, which is what I understand the comments are swaying towards. And it does not mean that staff are not doing their jobs. It means that they are managing a public space within the real constraints of weather, staffing, and risk priorities. That said, of course, we are open to respectful, constructive feedback. We want to know when something is not working as it should, because unfortunately, in spite of our best efforts, we don't always get it right. We would like to, in particular, know if there are safety concerns or operational issues that require immediate attention. I would encourage members of the public who wish to share their concerns to do so through official town channels. Facebook and social media, particularly on private spaces, is not monitored by staff religiously. Sometimes we occasionally see it or get things sent to us. So if they can provide feedback and concerns through official town channels, we may be able to attend to their comments as soon as we are able. I would also add that it genuinely brings me great joy to see members of the community when I drive by, especially young people, picking up a shovel, pitching in to help care for a shared community space. That sense of collective responsibility and pride is exactly what outdoor rinks are meant to foster and is part of what the small town opportunity brings to us. Our goal is always, as a department, to provide safe, accessible, and enjoyable community spaces, and to do so in a way that is fair, responsible, and sustainable. And I appreciate Council's continued support to both our staff on this balanced approach.
Thank you very much. I too appreciate this work of your team on Christmas and New Year's when the rest of us are resting, and public works staff were out keeping our sidewalks and roads safe in that border period and giving up Christmas, as many other public health workers do, but it was really appreciated. I know by council, the efforts to give up your Christmas and New Year's, some of them that have to work year round, so thank you. Mayor Panka?
Thanks, Director Clark, for the update. And I guess we've been, the byproduct, I guess, of a colder winter, we've had more ice time, I think, thus far, so this winter than we've had in many other years. Sometimes we get very little ice, unfortunately. So is there an operational plan as to how often it would be, the rink would be resurfaced or treated, or is it based on a staff to fit it in basis?
That's a great question. So if may, there is at least a daily requirement to resurface with the electric ice resurfacer, or sorry, the backup ice resurfacer. We don't take the electric out when we are open. So days like the 24th, the 25th, and 26th, we didn't have staff in the facility, so we obviously weren't operating. New Year's Day as well. So those types of days would be foregone. Unfortunately, those also coincided with some snowfall events this year. We do have also the tractor out at least 2 to 3 times a week or more as needed to clear the snow from the outside. But we get to clearing the actual surface when we can. But the expectation is that it is a community space, and so we're asking folks to pitch in as well, because it's not a fee for service experience, and so we want to make sure that we are protecting and investing in our fee for service facilities first and foremost, and safety first and foremost, and then we get to not so much squeezing it in, but when we get to the rink as an additional piece of our day. I say it's my operators, but.
Well, thank you. I guess days like today, if it's snowing most of the day, as it accumulates, we want to shovel it off. It helps keep the puck moving, I guess. But other than that, you can't be out there all the time to.
Fortunately, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Quinn, did you?
Thank you. And thank you for answering that. That was really important, that people get an idea of what the work schedule is. That's perfect. But one of the things I wanted to ask, is there a phone number that people can call to leave a message saying, they have concerns about this, rather than going on Facebook and then it just goes crazy?
Also a great question. So they can send an email to info@smithsfalls.ca if they're so inclined. There is the general line, the office number as well. And we are, just to make it easier, we are putting some signage out. We've noticed that the signage that was put there a number of years ago before my time doesn't exist anymore. So we've updated it and we've commissioned some signage, and that will also have the phone number on it. So, welcome.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. Thank you very much, Director Clark.
I'll see you in a little bit.
Well, we're down to priority issues. 10.1, Public Works Garage Fire with Director McMahon. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to echo what Director Clark said earlier. Was Happy New Year to everybody coming into 2026. Still snowing outside, so Mother Nature's still throwing curveballs at us. And I did want to echo and appreciate the recognition from council with respect to the amount of time the staff do spend during Christmas time and New Year's out there plowing snow or cleaning the rink, etc. When all of us are at home in the warmth with our families. So with that, I digress a little bit and get into my report here this evening. So my report is with respect to the content settlement that myself and my staff have been working on with respect to the Public Works garage fire that we sustained on the 15th of February 2025. As council will recall, council did approve for the clerk to sign the proof of loss settlement for the garage, the fire that happened at the garage to the property itself. So the next kick of the cat we're looking at is we need to settle on the contents that were in the garage that were damaged and deemed non-salvageable by our insurer, being Intact Public Entities. So it's been a fairly long process. There were a lot of contents that were in the north end of the garage that was directly subject to the fire, and then contents that were in we'll call it the southerly part of the garage being quote unquote the warehouse area where a smaller piece of equipment and much of our contents were stored as well that were subject to some smoke and heat fire. The culmination of all of those different supplies, tools, equipment, clothing, etc., that were in the garage were compiled into a 73-page document, if you can imagine, from IPE, from their adjusters. They went through everything with a fine-tooth comb with staff to make sure that nothing was overlooked. And like I mentioned, that did culminate into a 73-page document of contents that were deemed non-salvageable that would need to be replaced. So that takes me to the process and how we replace everything. So we have an option to replace everything based on what IPE deemed to be the equivalent equivalent replacement costs, if you will. So if there's a wrench that was worth $15, that is still worth $15, and there's no depreciation applied to it, and we were going to replace that, we would get $15 to replace that wrench. I'm sure council and the folks at home can appreciate the fact that 73 pages of contents would be a very laborsome task to go through to replace all of those contents in a short period of time. Simply wouldn't happen. It would be terribly laborsome. It would take probably a couple of my staff just to focus on procurement of those parts and pieces and all of the items that were lost. So with that, there was the replacement costs with some depreciation applied, and then there was another option being the actual cash value. So full depreciation applied would be something less than if we were to replace all of those items at their full value. So that seemed like a reasonable approach, and that's kind of the path we were going down with IPE until the most recent call we had with them where I along with our IPE manager that's been managing this file, had a discussion, and I felt it prudent. I mean, I'm going to work for the town. That's my job, to try to get the best value I can for the town on these contents. So we're talking about, upwards of just north of $600,000 or almost $600,000 worth of contents, $574,198.87 to be exact. So as you can see from the second page of the attachment, the actual cash value was $633,348.99. So that's if we were to replace everything, it would be $633,000 and change. If we were to take, when they applied a depreciation value for some of those items that were old, they weren't certainly new anymore, and they applied that depreciation value, IP would be looking at $515,048.75. So normally that would be, if the municipality chose to go that route, that would be the amount we were getting. So going to bat for the town, I mentioned to IPE that I believe that there's another option that we can look at. Some straight math applied. If we took the actual cash value of $633,000 and change, and we added the $515 and change, divide it by 2, comes out to $574. I think that's a pretty good value for IPE. It's a win-win. They win, the town wins, everybody's happy at the end of the day. And I'm happy to say that when I put this report together, I did not have the proof of loss, the contents proof of loss from IPE, albeit they were working on it and they believed it to be something that was going to be supported by the insurers. I did get notification from them today via email that we did receive the proof of loss, ready to be executed by the clerk with council's concurrence. So that played out how I was hoping it would be played out. $574,000 for contents, I think is really, really good value for the town. It then suggests that we don't have to go out and immediately purchase all of these pieces of items that were in the garage that were deemed non-salvageable. And to be quite frank, there would be some items in the garage that we simply wouldn't replace. Some older equipment that we had that they were in the garage, but we don't necessarily use on a day-to-day basis. So I guess the recommendation here this evening is to for council to direct the clerk to sign the contents proof of loss form from Intact Public Entities to authorize the release of settlement funds to the town in the amount of $574,198.87 as presented in Committee of the Whole Report 2026-03.
Thank you very much. Comments or questions from my Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, I support this 100%. Just the question with the 574, which is the content. So will that be applied when we, you're not going to replace everything as you said. So we're looking at a new building. Would any of that money go towards the new building would be my question.
Through the chair, it's possible. Like I said, there's items that we will replace and there's items that we will not replace. Council's discretion how they want to use that balance, but it could be some time before we actually recognize what that balance looks like. And I think it's important to note that there could be items that we perhaps didn't have before, items that we necessarily didn't use that were damaged in the fire that we might think now we don't want to replace, but at some point we might decide that we need to replace them. So my interest would be to, to keep those funds in a reserve account for the town for purposes of replacing small items. We know we need to replace clothing for staff that was damaged in the fire, that was subject to smoke damage. Most of that was deemed non-salvageable or written off, if you will. Much of that stuff has already been replaced at this point. Based on full replacement costs at 100%, there wasn't any depreciated value applied. And there was quite a number of items on that 73 document list that did not have depreciation applied because they were essentially newer items. Clothing would be a good example. So to answer the question, Councillor Brennan, yes, I believe perhaps maybe down the road we could consider a transfer from that reserve to offset costs for the building, but at this point I think it's a little early to tell what that number would look like.
Thank you, Director. And as I said, I support, and I think you've got a good deal for us there. So,
Councillor McGuire?
Yeah, thanks, Director McMahon, and I agree with Councillor Brennan. I was wondering, what did we lose that qualified as an antique?
Oh, that's a good question. Through the chair, I didn't bring the list with me, but there were, it could be a matter of them being antiquated past a certain age, that they just consider them antiques. I can say that there weren't any, what we would consider to be antiques, some, personal belongings or things that were necessarily important to any one particular individual that were, quote unquote antiques. None of that was in the building. So I know it was a very, very small list. I think there was an itemized list of about 3 or 4 or 5 pieces, to be quite honest. Yeah, but what they deem to be antiques, it's not what we consider to be antiques.
Thank you.
Okay. Everyone seems to be in favor. Certainly, I think it's your discretion to how you apply this money. You know what equipment and tools and things you need. It's certainly council doesn't want to get involved in that. So use it wisely. If there's some left over, that's great. But if there isn't, that's your job. So well done. Thank you. So the council committee is supporting the clerk to sign this, and it'll come up at the council meeting shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. 10.2 adoption and community improvement plan with Mr. Granke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. Happy New Year. I'm very pleased to bring forward a suite of proposed amendments to our community improvement plan. So as council will recall, we've spent a number of months working on a number of tweaks to the CIP to improve some of the operational elements and the administrative elements, as well as find ways to more meaningfully support projects that are important to the community. And we focused on larger ticket heritage items, as well as adjusting how we're looking at defining and managing affordable housing projects. So the amendments that are before you are the culmination of comments and feedback from a diverse group of businesses, property owners, associations, and committees we've consulted with over the last few months. And since the first draft was circulated, we've also received comments from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and those are appended to the planning clerk's report. So most of the MMAH comments we've received are fairly editorial, and we've made a number of suggested revisions to the policy suite that's before you. We call them friendly amendments, I guess. They are highlighting one new program, highlighting for consideration a signage program under the or signage sub-program under the facade. They'd raised some hesitation or caution, I guess, on the proposed tweaks to the eligibility criteria, whereby there's a proposal that property owners that are in tax arrears, their tenants can still apply for and potentially receive sign-only permits. So these are fairly small ticket items in the grand scheme of CIP. But I think certainly we want to, and that comment from that suggestion originated from the DBA, who recognized that the premise behind that proposal is that signage benefits the business more so than the individual property owner. So the concern, of course, and the comment is that does set a precedent. That's different from most other CIP programs we have, and the MMH has noted that the tax arrears have been sort of gradually on a bit of an increase in the town. So at the end of the day, there's no legislation that prevents council from offering that program. That is a program that council has that discretion. So we'll certainly look for your direction there. And one thing council can do as well is potentially, even if we're just limiting that availability to signs, we could say cap that at less than 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever number council's comfortable with. MMH had also suggested adding in an appeals process, and we've suggested some language there. Staff have proposed a few other tweaks to the program. You'll see that we're proposing to increase the interior funding for accessibility programs to match the exterior, and also some clarification language on with respect to heritage integration. So that's all in the report. We'll also need to renumber some of the sections, because we are proposing to remove the development charges rebate CIP program, because that's now under the Development Charges Act, and then add a residential heritage program. So I'd also certainly like to thank our planning clerk, Marie Elmsley, for her work on this report and her work on the CIP project as a whole. The product of what you see there is a culmination of quite a lot of work. And also thank, of course, the committees and those who've helped us along the way and lent their expertise to the process. So the process for the CIP, I think we're looking at it. If council sees fit to adopt these changes, then like every other year, we'll be looking at opening the spring intake at the time that the budget is approved. So following this step, the planning clerk will provide the usual annual report summarizing last year's CIP activity, and then seeking council's direction on which of the modified programs you'd like to see open. So I'll leave it at that, and welcome any feedback from council. And just before I do that, I'd just like to highlight we did have the statutory public meeting on December 15th for this and the Heritage Conservation District. We didn't get any specific public feedback relating to the CIP as a whole, so we don't have public direction that's going to change the tenor of what we're recommending this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Grinke. Questions, comments? Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. I'm supporting this. It looks great. You've done a lot of work on it. The one thing that kind of bothered me, though, was the fact that if a tenant is applying for some CIP funding and can't get it because the property owner is in arrears, I think there should be a mechanism here, a nice one, where the property owner understands why they're not getting this funding. It's because the property owner is in arrears, and I also think the tenant should know that it's not them that's at fault, because I think it could be quite easy for the tenant to think, well, what did I do wrong, or should I have applied for this differently? And really they had no control over it whatsoever. It wasn't anything to do with them. So I think there should be a nice way, something nice put into place so that people understand that. Other than that, you've worked hard on this. You really have, and I thank you for that.
Mr. Green.
I appreciate the comment, Councillor. It's not always the easiest conversation we've had, and oftentimes a CIP application often is from the tenant, the business owner. They typically get the property owner's permission to make that application. And what ends up happening is once we receive the completed application, we do our own eligibility screening. We find that properties in arrears, we'll usually give them a little bit of a chance to catch up and get that arrears resolved before the application moves forward in fairness. But if it doesn't, then obviously we have to advise the applicant that the property is ineligible for CIP. And like at the end of the day, that's a matter between the tenant and landlord. But certainly it's an unfortunate situation. Nobody wants to be in that situation. Certainly it's logical. Same thing if they're in litigation with the town for any reason. We don't want to be sending tax dollars to support a project where they're suing us over something else, or vice versa. So it's one of those tricky things where you don't want to point fingers, but we're wanting to make sure that we're managing the public dollars as that relates.
That sounds like a very nice way of doing it. Thank you. Councilor McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Carl. I want to share your appreciation for our planning clerk, Marie Elmsley, because I know she's done such a great job of working with our stakeholders, community groups, committees, to get this to where it is. And there's a few big planning projects that are coming up that she's been instrumental on. So really appreciate all the work on that. I've got a few questions, kind of comments on the final draft. The first is, sorry, I'm just going between screens here. When we look at the one quote, the minimum one quote won't stop us from getting other quotes, will it? If the one quote provided is unreasonable?
So through you, Mr. Chair, our practice is when the evaluation working group has a look at the applications and the quotes provided, we've done, and this is oftentimes where we work with the CBO on that process, we do a little bit of a common sense screening on that. So if a quote seems absolutely out of line, then we'll take that back. But I think the end, we used to always require 3 quotes, and then that has been in the past under the previous CIP, that's been a challenge to always get those quotes, because oftentimes the work is very, very specialized, or there simply won't be more than one entity quoting on something. But the intent here is that we're looking for clear demonstration of value. So I think operationally it would be at the discretion of those administering the program to sort of have that review and make sure that the numbers actually do make sense. The quote has to come from somebody who's at arm's length from the applicant as well. It can't be a family member who's quoting on that project.
Okay, great. So I think that's a good balance between the two. Through the chair, we've got in the 30 days to sign agreement, it says we need to sign the agreement in 30 days. If there's no consequence, or I'm thinking we need some stronger language of what happens if it isn't signed in 30 days. And my preference would be that the agreements let go and they can reapply in the next term coming up, and that money goes back into the pot if that's the consensus of the committee. Carl, how do you picture that? Like, how would that work and function?
So, thank you, Councillor, through you, Mr. Chair. I think the challenge that we've seen and the reason that this came from some of the experiences we've had, we've approved projects, funding has been sort of reserved for that project, and occasionally on a couple of projects, it's taken months for the applicant to commit to the terms of the agreement. And in that time, we don't really know, is this even going to go ahead? So we're proposing a time period. We're proposing 30 days. It doesn't have to be 30 days, but ultimately just for somebody to demonstrate that they plan to proceed and use the funds, or else they would lose it. So our read and our intent is that if they don't sign the agreement within whatever that set period of time is, that funding, I guess, goes back in the pot. They're free to reapply in the fall intake or what have you. But our hope is that we're going to be getting more applications than we have funds available for, and those that we've awarded funds will use it and move forward with their applications soon. So I think if council would like to see sort of stronger language clarifying that the consequence, I guess, of not signing within that set period of time is that the funding be revoked, that certainly can be a friendly amendment we can write into that. But I think that's our expectation for how that would unfold.
I wonder about using the word that it may be canceled at the end of 30 days as opposed to it will be, because I want to give you the discretion, or your team. There may be, might be 31 days, or you have to have some room to be, if there's circumstances. Yeah. So it may be, so that they know that that's a real possibility. But what do you think of that, Councillor McGuire?
Yeah, I guess when I think back to the ones that have taken longer than 30 days, usually there are applications that haven't been as well planned as other ones. So I guess my preference would be if they know this going into the application, they know this through the process, and then they know this when their funding's awarded. I don't see the month being too short of a time, but I think that if we've got an oversubscribed year where there's more projects than there are people, I'd really like to see that money reallocated to the next eligible project, instead of just set clear expectations with them that if you're not on top of it and you're not ready to go and you can't make it to the town hall in 30 days, the next person that needs this money is going to have access to it, or it'll go into the pot, and in 5 months when the reapplication comes through, we know how much of a pot we've got based on signing. But
okay, so
yeah,
so you're a hard stop at 30 days, and I was just suggesting it may stop at 30 days, but staff have some discretion. I don't know if there's other opinions on this. My colleagues, what would you like to see here? Mayor Penko?
I would be comfortable with 30 days with staff discretion at that point. If there was a minor thing or two which is outstanding and the staff would know it's going to proceed. If it looks like there's not enough progress, it's not going to proceed, then again, I think it's discretion to staff I'm comfortable with.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor.
That's okay. I know who you're talking about. I'm in agreement with that. 30 days, but give some discretion to
Councillor
staff.
Brennan's doing a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Okay, so that it may certainly, the goal is to get it signed off within 30 days. If not, it may end. It likely will, and yes, Mr. Grinke.
So I think just to confirm council's consensus, I could add some language to that provision stating unless an extension mutually agreed upon in writing between the town and applicant.
Okay. Would
that satisfy? Is council amenable to that?
Yes, they're all nodding yes. Thank you. Your next point, Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The next one is for the Residential Heritage Program, and I suggest that we have some kind of a time limit. I think that it's going to be a game changer program for properties in the town, but I don't, right now, the way it's worded, somebody could apply for the max funding year over year over year. And I think just to limit the eligibility for it, have a 5-year cap, or once every 5 years a residential property is eligible. It would help spread out the funds to different properties and prevent one property owner from maxing it out every year. I'm interested to hear if there's what other people are thinking, or if anybody else's head is in that area.
We'll turn to our expert first. Mr. Granke, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's a fair comment. Some of our programs, including our facade programs, have some language that sort of prioritize new applications. So the language is that we have for commercial facades is that preference be given to those who haven't been funded in the last 5 years. So that doesn't necessarily exclude somebody who's received funding, but they're kind of at the back of the line. But if they come forward with a proposal that is really, really exciting and they had some work done 4 years ago, wouldn't necessarily exclude them, but I think we'd have to have a look. So I guess that's one option that would be available to councils. We can insert some language similar to that within that provision.
What do you think, Councillor McGuire?
Yeah, that sounds great.
And I looked at my colleagues, they're all nodding, so that's good. That was a good suggestion. Thank you. Another good suggestion. Keep going and
I'm almost through the list here. The next one was in the section 15 residential heritage. There's a bullet point that says the repairs rehabilitation is to the exterior heritage attributes as listed in the accompanying heritage designation bylaw for the subject property. And I think we should take that bullet out with the consideration that sometimes a roof repair could save a masonry aspect that is a heritage attribute. So there's a building's a system, and I think that the committee and the application process can determine if it's got good value for money for the investment. But if we make it too specific here, there's other aspects of it that need to be maintained to make sure the heritage attributes are maintained. So I'm just thinking of that that exclusion, how that's excluded in the current wording.
That's a detail I hadn't noticed before. Mr. Granke, do you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, so I think the intent behind these policies is that we're intending to support not just every change to a designated heritage property, but something that's really fundamental and integral to what's the features that are listed. So a heritage designation bylaw it lists specific heritage attributes on a property, and I think the point that was raised is that sometimes they relate to each other. One can impact the other. So the language there provides there's a little bit of redundancy, I think, in the language as drafted. So I don't see any concern with removing the section that was, Councillor McGuire and I did discuss this coming into that. So I am prepared for these, and I was expecting that question, but I think that's a fair deletion there.
So Mr. Granke is okay with it. The council's nodding. Thank you. Keep going, please.
Okay, thanks. And last points are to do with the committee. The first one is just that says Downtown Business Association manager right now. And I was thinking it's probably better to just have a representative from the Downtown Business Association so that, they can send whoever they want to send, whether it's a member of their executive or their staff member for the first one. And then the second half of that is I still feel pretty strongly that the leaner this committee is, the more effective it's going to be. When I talk to members of certain departments, it's a common theme that there's a lot of workload in different departments, and I don't know that sitting on this committee every time it meets is effective. When we look at reports that we get from when we look at different reports that come to committee of the whole, often there's a section on consultations. So a report comes from the planning department, but the public works has been consulted on it, and maybe economic development's been consulted on it, and then that comes together to the one report. I think when we're reviewing these files, if there's one that comes up that's it's a big ask, or it's going to have an implication on future tax revenues, then obviously we want to consult the finance department. If there's one that has implications for community services, then we want to consult those groups and bring them into it. But to have them in on every single meeting of every single application, it's a lot bulkier than I think this needs to be, and I think it from past experience serving on this committee from 2015 until it was disbanded, it just, I think for the screening and getting value for money, a leaner format's best here. So I don't think that that means excluding different groups from the conversation, but just bringing them in when it's really necessary, and having the core three, heritage, planning, and downtown business association, manage the bulk of the everyday work of it.
Thank you. If I understood you, I'm not sure it's in the purview of council, though, to decide how staff operationalize this. And I think it's the CEO and the director's response. So that could be a suggestion. But I would hesitate, if I understood you correctly, to dictate on how staff should operationalize this. So I don't know if you want to clarify or if I've got that right.
Yeah, so like right now it's laid out in the plan of what the committee will be.
Yes.
So if we took out that section and we just left it at the discretion of planning or CAO or whoever, then that leaves it a little bit more dynamic to shape it the way staff think it needs to be shaped. But as it stands right now, to have those 5 positions and have them set in stone the way they are, I think it makes it a lot bulkier than it needs to be from our experience operating this in the past. But
Okay. Any comments from CAO? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate the concern about, staff resources, but I think it was done for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the more people you have, the more perspectives you have, and so we want to look at these applications from a 3-dimensional perspective. So Public Works might bring a different perspective than a planner, for instance. There's also, by having a set group of people, there's some consistency, and that group gets to know the nuances of, firstly, the policy, and secondly, the application of that policy and what the bigger objective is. So I think there's advantage to having a defined group of people on the committee. It does take time, but we are spending taxpayer dollars, and we want to make sure we're making the best recommendations and providing a balanced perspective. So I would be in favor of either a defined group, or if we wanted to leave that with staff to define the group. But either way, we want a consistent group of people that come together to look at applications, so we provide a consistent interpretation of the policy.
Okay. Councillor Brennan, do you want to comment on this particular point?
Yeah, and I agree with what CEO Morris just said. And it is not an insignificant amount of taxpayer dollars, and we want to do due diligence. And I would look to staff to advise on their capacity to help with this. And I did think I just heard they have the capacity. So I'm happy to have them do that, because the CIP program is important, and we're spending taxpayers' dollars, and we need staff to assist us with it. So I agree with CAO Morris.
So Councillor McGuire has suggested at the exact word, there's at the behest of staff to determine the committee makeup, as opposed to putting it into the policy. So I'm neutral on that either way. Mayor Penko.
I mean, as presented, there's consistency among the 3, and I respect giving the DBA essentially their autonomy to decide whether it's a board member or staff. That's fine. And I would say leaving it up to the manager of development services, which 2 of the other potential 4 would be needed, maybe based on what the application is for.
Right. But again, it belongs in your purview. So let's define it and leave it up to staff, and there's an agreement on a representative of the PIA as opposed to manager. Is that clear? Everyone's got that? All right. Anything else, Councillor McGuire?
No, just thanks again to Mr. Grenke and Murray Elmsley, and I really appreciate this coming forward tonight.
No, that was great feedback. Thank you, Councilor McGuire. Anyone else? I'm just, even after 7 years on council, I'm always surprised at the reach from Queen's Park out into these little details from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, but they're so interested in our CIP, and it's great. And some of their suggestions were very good. So anything else from you, Mr. Grinke?
No, I appreciate the comments. I think we've made a few tweaks here that are good, and I think we'll look for council's direction as to whether council's comfortable adopting the CIP based on the changes that we've looked at this evening, or how you want to proceed.
So we do have it on the agenda for tonight, and I think they were relatively minor in nature. I think we could, I'm hoping if council agrees to move it forward tonight.
Yeah, as amended.
Yes, okay. Thank you, as amended. Thank you very much. Don't go anywhere. 10.3 is the adoption of the Heritage Conservation District. Please proceed.
Just wait until we have our Christian Giansante from Stantec Consulting. He'll be joining us, and he is on screen. So I'd like to, and I'm pleased to bring forward an update to council on the Heritage Conservation District Plan. So council as a group last saw this on November 24th when you considered an issues and options report that sought direction on a few of the topics that have come up in the engagement and in review with the Municipal Heritage Committee and others. So I'd also like to introduce Christian Giansante from Stantec. He's been working with, we've gotten to know each other well over the last 2 years. He's been working with us on this project since the very beginning when we started the study phase. He'll present the HCD plan and evaluate the feedback that we've received at the public meeting and other sources from to this point. But at this point, council's in, and I'll just talk briefly on sort of where we're at and give my thanks as well. At this point, council's in position to consider adopting the new Heritage Conservation District Plan, subject to any fine tuning that council would like to see. MHC, it's not on tonight's council agenda by law for consideration. MHC's requested the opportunity for a review of the final plan, subject to any tweaks, and we'll have the opportunity to consider passing a motion in support. So I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Christian and his team at Stantec for their work on the project, the engagements that they've led, and the technical guidance they've provided staff, MHC, and others over the last couple of years. I'd like to thank our steering committee, consisting of town staff as well as a local realtor, for sort of the strategic guidance they provided on this project. They've taken some time on this as well as MHC, of course. They've reviewed a few drafts and provided some comments over the course of the project. And we didn't get a lot of public feedback. We had several folks come out. We did have some feedback from Trinity United Church that's referenced in the report, but those who've participated have taken the time and provided to provide their thoughts, and we're grateful for them. So I'll turn it over to Christian now for the presentation and questions, and if there are comments or discussions, especially of a technical nature, that Christian would be best prepared to speak to. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carl. I have a presentation. I don't know if I should be the one sharing or...
Let me just check, Christian. I'll see if it's easier for... I've got it up on my...
I can share. It's just it's up to you.
We lose the other council members often when...
Yeah.
So I'll leave it to the clerk to give us a little direction, but welcome. It's nice to have you back.
Thank you. Nice to be back on the big screen in the sky. It's always a fun place to be.
Give me one sec, Christian. I think it might be with the number of people on virtual tonight, it might be easier to have you share your screen. I'm just confirming.
Okay, sounds good.
If you could share your screen, that would be fabulous.
We can do that. Give me 2 seconds. All right, got that. And if I make it screen mode.
We've got that.
Is
Thank
that
you.
perfect? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Nice to be here to present the Downtown Smiths Falls Heritage Conservation District Plan. So just a quick overview of what we'll be discussing today. We'll just be kind of going over the project. I believe many of you are familiar with it. Talking about what is in the plan and how it affects the town. An overview of the public consultation that we've completed, as well as some next steps and some discussion points. So just a reminder of what an HCD is. There are 2 phases. There's the study phase and the plan phase. The study phase was completed in 2024, and we received direction from council to develop an HCD plan, which is where we are at now. Just a reminder that an HCD plan is designed to manage change moving forward. It's not retroactive, and it's not meant to force people to change things, but it is a guiding document for changes in the future within the area of the HCD. Other things that we're looking at in the HCD plan phase are the objectives of the HCD that were outlined in the HCD study, preparing policies and guidelines, with policies being the mandatory things that must be followed within the HCD, and the guidelines being the nice to haves or direction on how to properly conserve the heritage value of the HCD. We're also looking at defining the implementation measures, incorporating public feedback that we've received at our public information centers over the course of last year, the community notices that were included, and the statutory public meeting that was held on December 15th in Town Hall. Just an overview of what is in the plan. It's divided into 5 main sections. Section 4 being the bulkiest of the sections, which has the specific policies and guidelines for the HCD, and these apply to all buildings in the HCD, but there are specific policies developed for contributing buildings and for non-contributing buildings, but it also relates to new construction and how that gets dealt with within the boundaries of the HCD. So it gets fairly into the nitty-gritty there, but it does cover almost anything that you would want to do to a property or to the landscape within the HCD. So just an overview, like kind of what I was saying. There are different policies and guidelines that are prepared for different building types. So for commercial buildings versus an institutional building, there are different approaches for each of those buildings. Ultimately, the onus for implementing or adhering to the HCD plan is on the property owner, and it is up to them to look at the HCD plan and figure out how their alteration or their new construction or their addition would fit within the framework of the HCD plan. And like I said before, the goal of the HCD is to manage change moving forward. It's not to freeze a place in time. It's not to make it feel like Disney World. It's not to make it feel like it's the 1890s again. It's to consider what is present in the HCD and accommodate changes moving forward. So in terms of consultation, what we've done for the HCD plan phase, there have been 2 separate public information centers, both drop-in style events where we had people attend, ask questions, and really have an open dialogue about what was going to go into the HCD plan and kind of their general thoughts on the draft HCD plan. We also had monthly meetings with the steering committee, which, as Carl mentioned, consisted of town staff, MHC representation, and a local realtor, Pauline, who was very helpful in kind of the direction of a lot of our policies and guidelines. We've also presented periodically to the Heritage Committee and to you folks at Council. So all of that input has been boiled down and put into the HCD plan as it stands today. And we also, I guess, on December 15th, have the statutory public meeting, which is the mandatory meeting for the HCD as it moves towards its approval. In terms of feedback received, we've categorized it into the three big categories here. Council requested additional feedback from MHC. MHC provided that feedback, which we'll get into discussing today, and also provided additional comments and thoughts on the list of exemptions and the delegated authority contents of the HCD plan. In terms of feedback we've received from the public specific to the HCD plan, we received input on examples of signage, the desire for additional financial incentives, the additional considerations for places of worship, and support for flexibility from the municipal side of things. So the next three slides are kind of structured as a discussion between, hopefully, we're just hoping to get council's direction on some of these things. So we can either go through all three slides at once or come back or just do one slide at a time. It might be easier to do one slide at a time. What do you think?
That sounds good. That sounds good.
All right. So in terms of signage, we received specific direction the last time we presented at the Issues and Options meeting, just to look more into some of the specific things and incorporate some thoughts from MHC. So the first one was compliance with the dark sky compliance. We think that it shouldn't necessarily be tackled in the HCD plan. It should likely be expanded on in the signage bylaw, which we would then refer back to. And then in terms of compatible signage, we received comments from MHC regarding, and from the signage specialist, I guess, regarding materials for sign composition. And we've updated that to reflect that. And in terms of hanging signage, there was comments to make that more explicit, but again, it's tied into the signage bylaw. So we would recommend looking at the signage bylaw to address some of those things.
Is there and this might be for our staff, but is there an order of importance on, or would our sign bylaw outweigh the Heritage District when it comes to night sky, and which takes precedence?
I can't see if Carl has stood up, but I think generally we've been referring to the more prescriptive of the two.
Which means the signage bylaw.
Yes.
Okay. That was my only question. I think, well, I don't know what council thinks, but my preference is that particular night sky be, we get our guidance from the signage bylaw and don't try to incorporate that into the heritage. And I'm seeing some thumbs up. Mm-hmm. And it does take precedence over the Heritage District, is what I'm hearing. Okay. What was your next question then?
Next one was just on some MHC comments, just these two specifically as it relates first off to roofing materials. There was a recommendation from MHC to explore including metal roofing in the policies and guidelines for alterations. We have some hesitancy there just because there's no real historical justification for recommending the use of metal roofs. However, we've found a means of including it in the sustainability and alternative energy guidelines section. That could be a means of including it there, which is our approach, but we would like just kind of council's direction on the roofing approach before we finalize that.
Okay, any thoughts from committee on that recommendation? It's mentioned under the sustainable and sustainability and alternative energy guidelines within the plan. Any comments? Councilor McGuire?
Yeah, I support that. I think it makes sense and it gets our objectives met.
Okay, any other thoughts? I'm good with that. People are nodding their heads and thumbs up, so that's good with that recommendation. Thank you. With the next one.
I love the speed. Next one was just the delegated bylaw. MHC, I believe, had recommended including a delegated authority bylaw within the HCD bylaw. But I think we should just keep them separate, just because the delegated authority bylaw, if passed, could theoretically apply to other things that aren't just the HCD. And I think if there was a need to modify one or the other, they shouldn't be part and parcel together if that is the approach that is taken.
This one's a little complex for a layman like me, and I'm looking the CAO if he had a comment on this one.
Yeah,
Not to put you on the
think,
spot, or-
no, that's fine. I think the principle of keeping them separate has merit, because there are other delegated authorities within the town. But I would look to Mr. Grenke to offer examples of how delegated authority would be applied within the HCD first.
Okay.
So the plan, through you, Mr. Chair, if council adopts the Heritage Conservation District now or this month, then there is no delegated authority. Every single piece, every single item that requires a heritage approval, no matter how small, would need to go through council and then be reviewed by the Municipal Heritage Committee. We would have that sort of that opportunity to have a broader look at that, and I think that makes sense as we get our feet underneath the HCD and get a little bit of practice working with it and seeing what applications look like, those operational pieces. But certainly if volume picks up or depending on the nature of it, the draft HCD plan opens the door for us to, or for you to consider delegating certain minor things, and what those minor things are entirely up to council. So council, with the consultation of the Heritage Conservation District, can determine that, say, some forms of painting or signs or whatever it is that are a little bit more local or I guess tactical nature rather than bigger picture. Those approvals can be signed off on by municipal staff through a process that we create, and that's not entirely dissimilar to various other pieces. Site plan approval, for example, is delegated to staff. We had a bylaw that delegated minor site plan approvals to staff. The province has changed it, so now it's everything. But I know that the clerk's office is working on some broader delegated authority permissions for things in a variety of departments, typically more administrative in nature. So I think it's a normal process. We could pass a bylaw that either relates specifically to Heritage Conservation District delegation of authority, or it can be part of a bigger bylaw. But I think the idea is creating it as a separate bylaw means that it can be amended without having to go back and amend the HCD as a whole. So the HCD is proposed, authorizes council to, at some point in the future, pass a bylaw that delegates essentially whatever it is that you want to delegate to staff, and then we can have that conversation a little bit later on once we've had some practice in implementing the HCD.
Okay, that's a really good explanation. Thank you. Comments on this? I'm generally very supportive of delegated authorities, and but you're just feeling at this point it's premature to start delegating that. Let's get a couple of years under our belt or whatever. Okay.
Yes, I think it from our perspective, I think once we have that practice, at first we define the Heritage Conservation District process, and then we sort of that's a whole separate conversation between staff, council, and the Heritage Committee in terms of sort of the subjects to delegate.
So I'm seeing a lot of nodding and thumbs up. So we agree. Thank you very much. That really helped. I couldn't get my head around that one. What's next, Christian?
It's next up we have heritage permit exemptions. Sorry. So there are three things here that I think it's worth discussing. The first two being paint. This is where we are trying to strike a balance between having a a flexible HCD plan and a prescriptive HCD plan. So the MHC currently recommended removing the exemption for painting surfaces that have already been painted. Our opinion is that it's hard to tell people to get a permit to paint a surface that is already painted. So our workaround to this would be recommending that if painting needs to be done for maintenance purposes, if it's the same color, you're just fixing it up, you're fixing up some patches, there's no need to go to the MHC to get a permit to do that. If there's a significant change in color, then that would go through the typical permitting process. And then the decision would be made either at a staff level or at an MHC level on that front. So that would be the first point. And just the second one, while it's on the same category, is there was a recommendation to not allow the painting of masonry on non-contributing buildings. That one is also a little hard on our end, just because if it's a non-contributing building, we basically identified it as a non-contributing building that doesn't contribute to the heritage value of the HCD. So not allowing painting on those surfaces would be very, or requiring a permit to paint on those buildings would be a little hard. So we've revised the exemption to allow painting of non-contributing buildings unless there is brick or stone on the facades. So I'll open the floor to the painting question.
Okay, comments, Councilor McGuire?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So the rationale of the first point of painting brick surfaces that have already been painted goes back to the CIP project on William Street, where we funded a project to paint brick that had been painted because the paint was peeling. A year or two later, the paint's peeling again, the brick's still deteriorating, and it's just this negative cycle. So as much as in theory or kind of on paper, it sounds like painting it is a maintenance exercise, it's really just making the problem going from bad to worse, and it's not really solving the peeling paint problem, and it's not solving the masonry problem. So that's where the MHC, I think, was trying to take a stronger stance on let the paint fall off or let it be half painted or whatever. But as long as we keep putting coats of paint on those buildings, they're just deteriorating faster and faster. So I don't support the first one. For the second one, painting non-painted cladding surfaces other than brick on non-contributing buildings, I think that it makes sense the way it's worded, but I don't know what the difference between those examples and masonry would be. And then I fully support the wording on the third bullet.
Any other comments on the first one from the colleagues?
Yeah.
All right, jump in.
Sure.
Michael.
No, I'll take Stantec's recommendation. I think I appreciate what Councilor McGuire is saying, and from a maintenance standpoint, I'd rather see something repaired and painted, because the alternative is it may continue to deteriorate, or the owner is forced to essentially resurface the entire building. So I think it would just be reasonable situations that, from a financial standpoint, try to maintain what is there. It may not be ideal, but it's better than deteriorating further.
I'm seeing nodding in agreement with the mayor. Again, Councilor McGuire, please.
I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page that when we repaint the masonry surfaces that have already been painted, we're allowing the brick and the masonry work behind the paint to continue to deteriorate. And as those walls could be structural, or, you know, a lot of them aren't, the older ones aren't just a facade of brick, it's part of the structure. We're deteriorating the structural component of that wall every time we put a coat of paint on it. And that's why the paint's flaking off, right? The masonry's failing, the the brick is falling apart because the moisture can't escape. So even though putting that coat of paint on it gives you a short-term reprieve of aesthetically it looks a little bit better until it starts peeling again, you are going to keep deteriorating that wall and you are going to start losing bricks, and it's just going to keep going from bad to worse. So that's the rationale behind where we're at there.
Right, and that also makes an assumption that all brick painted, the reason they painted it is because it's deteriorating, and that may not be the case. It's for aesthetic. The brick is perfectly good. You're pulling up an example where that was the case, where the brick was failing and they painted it and then had to do it again in a couple of years, but there are other paint jobs that last very long. Go ahead, Councilor Breyer.
No, so the example that we're using is the brick is failing because of the paint. It might have needed repointing before the paint job, but the failing of the brick component itself is directly related to the paint sealing the moisture in, and then that causing it to fail.
Yeah, I don't know that, so I appreciate that's your view, and I just don't know that. Sorry, I don't disagree with you. I just don't know. That's information that I'm not an expert in or have any comment on. So, does Sandtech have anything more to say on their recommendation or in response to Councilor McGuire's inquiry, Christian?
Yeah, no, I Councillor McGuire is making all very accurate points. I think our kind of stance is once, not to say it's too far gone, but once it's been painted and it's started to deteriorate, the paint at least gives a barrier of protection to the exterior if it's reapplied regularly as a maintenance process. If it's let to just kind of flake off and then the owner say decided not to repaint it or not go through the permit process to paint it again, that leaves that deteriorated brick or masonry just exposed to the elements, which could theoretically accelerate the deterioration when there's changing weather conditions that go to where the brick has already deteriorated. So framing it as a maintenance approach offers a it's not a catch-all solution, but it offers a temporary fix until a larger kind of restoration or cleaning project could be undertaken.
So there's a little more flexibility for the property owner. Because if it's allowed to deteriorate, then it becomes a public health hazard or something, and then our building inspection people get involved. I see a Morris, and then I'll come back to you, Councilor McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if it would be helpful to understand what the objective is here. So if there was a prohibition on repainting an already painted surface, is the objective to get the owner to sandblast the paint off and fix the problem, fix the masonry problem? Is that what the MHC was that the objective?
I think that's directed at you, Councilor McGuire.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah Moore. So I guess let's just frame this conversation on the context that it's on, and that's exemptions. So we're not discussing what can or can't be done right now. We're just discussing which can be done without going through the permit process. So I'm saying, if somebody wants to repaint their brick surface, maybe it's an extenuating circumstance and maybe that's the best thing that can happen, but let's go through the permit process, and then the town has an opportunity to say, hey, this is actually creating structural damage to your wall potentially. Have you considered other options? And by having that dialogue, then we've just got that opportunity to have a better outcome at the end of the day. So this is just the thing for heritage permit exemptions, like the things that can happen without any kind of discussion. And I think that because we've had reoccurring issues with the painted brick and its failure in town, and we had a CIP project this year that removed paint from brick. I don't see the need to make the painting the brick an exemption. I get the cladding surfaces aren't on the same level, but because the brick you could lose the wall. it'd be worth having that conversation through the permit process.
Okay. It's one of one of the reasons I had some reservations about the Heritage District conversation is we start to get into this level of detail on property owners. So, Councillor Brennan, why don't you jump in?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you, what you're saying, Chair. This is an important policy, but I really have hesitancy in prescribing with private property owners what they can and can't do with their property. So I support Stantec's recommendation on all three of those bullets.
And I think Councillor McGuire agreed on 2 of the 3, and it was the number 1 that you were more hesitant about, right? The rest of council, I think the mayor spoke. He's accepted Stantec's recommendation, as Councillor Brennan has. Councillor Robinson and Councillor Quinn have. So that all 3 of those have been the majority of committee have accepted the recommendations from Stantec on this. A good discussion. Do you want to go to the next slide, Christian?
Yeah, I think the next slide is just the timeline, obviously reflective of the December 15th meeting, but we are still working with this timeline. So our anticipated or hoped for next steps are today the approval of the development of a final HCD plan, which incorporates these final comments that were discussed today, which would then go to MHC for a final review. And then at that MHC meeting on January 13th, MHC would provide a resolution to council either to adopt or not to adopt the HCD plan. And then that would then come to council on January 19th for hopeful approval of the HCD plan and designating bylaw. So that's kind of our timeline to wrap this up by the end of January. And that's my thank you note. So that's that. So I'm open to questions, or I'll pass back over to Carl. Actually, I see him walking up.
Thank you very much, Christian. And I'll just look to my colleagues. Is there any questions on overall on the timelines, the next steps? We'll see the input that we've provided tonight included in the next draft and the next final draft, I guess. Any overall comments? Thank you for the 2 years of work that everyone has put into this. The Municipal Heritage Committee has been very engaged and very helpful, as other community members, and the feedback was good. Anything, last word to you, Mr. Grinke?
No, I certainly it's been a project. I think what's one thing that's exciting about the HCD is it helps us define sort of the place and what our vision is for the downtown, and something that is really and truly Smith Falls. I think wanted to highlight the point too. A lot of the questions I've received through the process are, can we do this? Are we allowed to do this? The question, at the end of the day, it is up to council. We can regulate windows, we don't need to. We can regulate paint, we don't need to. So I think there's a lot of discretion that council has in terms of formatting a plan that actually does that meets the needs of the community as expressed through council. So I think certainly what we have here is a draft. So I think it is not so any final changes that we have, and certainly I've received some questions from councillors earlier today. I want to make sure that we have the opportunity, and I guess provide Stantec the instructions that council wants that council's looking for in terms of finalizing the draft and bringing that forward first to MHC and then to council. So if there's any other questions or suggestions, we'll myself and Christian are happy to assist.
Just reflecting back on our earlier conversation regarding delegated authority. So in a couple of years, we'll have more experience with this, and it may be, there'll be some other things we want to tweak, not right away, but if we haven't got it perfect, we're going to keep aiming towards that. Maybe in a couple of years, we could, the council of the day could revisit and adjust.
So I see Councillor McGuire he has his hand up, but before I defer, I'll just comment on the amendment question. I think that's something that we've done this with the CIP. It's normal that once we worked with a significant policy document for a little while, things come up that we want to housekeep. The Heritage Act doesn't prescribe a detailed amendment process the way it does for say a zoning change. So the Act does require a minimum of one public meeting, and obviously that was what we're bound to with the HCD. We went far beyond that through this process as we should have. It's very minimal, but I just wanted to advise council if we were going to be amending it, there would be a public process. It's not something that can happen through a cow report on its own.
Okay, and Councillor McGuire, did you?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I've still got further comments that I had from the December meeting that through the MHC and different groups. Is this the time now to go through those ones?
This is your chance. Are they brief?
They're important, I think.
You wouldn't bring it up if it wasn't important, Councillor McGuire, so go ahead.
I guess I look to Mr. Grenke on because we've discussed some of these previously. Which ones? Maybe there's certain ones that we can take offline, and there's certain ones that we need to get committee's direction tonight. I think when it let me scroll through here. I guess the first question for Christian, when we look at the window section, the first draft of the window section had more detail in it that's been removed. What was the reasoning for that, or what's the advantage of having the slimmed down section?
The edits to that section were based on a request that we got from MHC to reduce the amount of editorial content that was in the specific wording of the policies. So I think you're referring specifically to the retain wood framed windows policy. Ultimately, we decided that the additional content that you're referring was editorial, and that the policy, to be direct, was just to retain the wood framed windows.
Okay, so no loss of effectiveness, just more concise wording
just
there.
Streamlining, yeah.
Okay, great. And then further in the window section, we've got a bullet that says it is not permitted to fill window openings with alternative materials. And following up on our conversation at the last committee, the whole meeting, there seemed like there was strong support to eliminate the use of the window wraps and the non-transparent coatings, or I don't know what the right word is for it, but I just want to make sure that this language is robust enough to get our objectives met on that.
Yeah, so I think our understanding, the way that it's worded in that section is that by fill, we generally mean like structurally fill, like you can't brick up a window. The window wraps are discussed in the signage section of the HCD plan in section 4.8 of the report. It's written in there as a guideline to not include complete window coverings that go kind of side to side, but temporary stick-ons for a promotion or an advertisement are allowed.
Okay, great. So I guess my suggestion would be that the permanent ones be a policy and not a guideline, because a guideline is just a suggestion and the policy is the rule. And my impression from our last committee, the whole meeting, was that there was support to make that a rule.
Yes. So we've got the bulk of that signage section refers back to the sign bylaw. So similar to the lighting, I think we would encourage kind of a stricter use of the signage bylaw rather than having the window covering be an HCD requirement. Just similar to the metal roofing, there's no real solid historical reason for them not to be covered up. These windows could have been historically covered with signage, theoretically. So if there's another document that can be perhaps more stringent in their application of explicitly not allowing them, it might be a stronger approach just from a sign implementation approach. So we've included some strong language in the guidelines, strongly discouraging it, but it's hard to put it as a policy when it's not like a heritage. You're not altering the physical presence of the building when it's just a window film placed on the interior of the building.
Okay, sounds good. So I guess looking to Mr. Grinke or CEO Morris, is that something we can expect from an update of, I guess as we put this HCD through, there's things in the signage bylaw that are going to need to be updated to be agreeable to it. So are we looking at having that bylaw updated after this is passed?
Yeah, there's a ripple effect once we do this. So, Mr. Grinke, is there a reasonable timeline?
There's, Mr. Chair, there are a number of other amendments, including unrelated to the Heritage Conservation District that staff are looking at to sort of facilitate and smooth the administration of the sign bylaw. So we're sort of working through a couple of large policy pieces right now, but this would be one of the pieces that we'd be looking at within the next year, coming to council with some suggested housekeeping revisions to the sign bylaw. Certainly, we want to make sure that if a new conservation district comes into place, that we don't have an existing bylaw that's in conflict.
Is it reasonable to do it within this term of council?
We will certainly do our best. I think
that's all we can ask. Yeah. Okay. Was there anything else, Councilor McGuire?
Yes. So sorry, I'm scrolling through here. We've got a guideline in section. Yeah, so the guideline on 43151, which is storefronts, there's a bullet on choosing paint for masonry that has previously been painted. For this to go into, if it's an exception, when would these guidelines be considered if that's an exception to the permit process?
Sorry, to which point are you referring?
Sorry, I've got too many sections here. In 4.3.1.5 or 4.3.1.4 is storefronts.
Yep.
And then in 4.3.1.5.1, there's a guideline about choosing paint for masonry that has been previously been painted. But if permitting is exempting, if painting masonry that's already been painted is exempt, then would any of this section about the paint and masonry be, would ever be used, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, so I'm even though it's exempt from a permit, the guidelines still apply. Like if someone wants to, do, the best heritage practices, they can go into the entire thing and, follow all the guidelines. Someone could theoretically, who has a non-contributing building, follow all the guidelines for a contributing building if they wanted to. So the guideline is there as information that a property owner can access for kind of that best approach to repainting. Like if they want to repaint with a new color, which is not exempt based on the wording that we've approved, they would use this guideline, because if they're changing it from a red to a gray, they would probably need to come into this section and learn about paint. and how to reapply it to the building.
Okay, so maybe in the CIP context where they're coming to us for money and we could, there's value in it there. So that makes sense. So through the chair there, in the woodwork section, there's the first 1, 2, 3, 4 guidelines are apply paint and coatings that are compatible with the material after proper surface preparation, stabilize deteriorated wood, replace decayed or damaged wood, and find the cause of deterioration and prevent water penetration and weathering by providing proper drainage. To me, these are all things that we'd want to see happening all the time, and I can't think of a situation where you wouldn't want to follow those 4 steps. So would they be better as policies than as guidelines?
I think the reason that we place them in the guidelines section is because they're not necessarily approaches that are, completely necessary to conserving some woodwork. They are kind of the gold standard for doing it. But for example, with the 3rd bullet point of stabilizing the deteriorated wood, it's one of those policies or one of those guidelines that could be policies, but they're not really enforceable. You can't, force someone to stabilize a, say, decorative piece of woodwork if there's no, if I'm thinking of a piece of barge board, for example, if it's just hanging there or if it's hard to reach, it's hard for us to put down an HCD saying you must go up and stabilize this piece of wood right now. Whereas if we have it as a guideline, it's kind of our understanding that, you should do this. But if it's not possible, here are some reasons why. So, I think some of them we could move into policies, like the paint coatings or the replacement. But it might not be all of them.
I'm thinking of when we've had issues downtown where pieces are falling off the tops of buildings. If they're, I don't know if this is the right place, but if it's not, just knowing what the right tool is to say, hey, this is deteriorating to a point where it could fall off and hit something or somebody, and having a tool to get the property standards enforcement in to fix it.
Yeah, so I think those ones in the woodwork sections are ones that we can look into moving into policies. But like I said, probably not all. Like the stabilization one is the one I'm kind of waffling on, but the other ones we could look into moving.
Well, could we do that at the end of the 2-year period when we have had some experience? Maybe none of these issues will come up and we'll be still speculating on what could happen. If we've had some experience in a couple of years, this has been a consistent problem. We need to move it from a guideline to a policy. But we'd have, rather than speculate what might happen, would it be better to do it that way? I'm thinking out loud and looking to my colleagues. Councillor McGuire, any thoughts?
I just guess a good policy is not about thinking about one-off things that could happen. I think if we look at those 4 bullet points, is there ever a situation where you'd put a coating of paint over something that you haven't prepared properly first? Is there ever a situation where something's deteriorated to the point that it's not structurally stable and you wouldn't want to have it repaired? I can't think of any exceptions to those 4 bullet points that would make them guidelines instead of policies. All of those things I think are pretty crucial to the maintenance of a building. And I think when we go back to the DBA's comments of property standards and building maintenance in the downtown and having the buildings maintained in a way that promotes their businesses and promotes people wanting to spend time in the downtown, that's where to me it's like, why wouldn't it be a policy, right?
And I can't think of examples where I painted over wood to just brighten it up and get a couple more years out of it that I probably should have replaced it, but that was my choice. And so I'm just, yes, the best thing would be for me to replace the veranda, but I didn't. I painted over it, patched it, and I got a couple more years out of it. And that's reasonable from my point of view. So I would rather have those guidelines as best practice. And in a couple of years, we find that, so that's just my thoughts. They're just, they're all, that is the best practice. I think the term gold standard was used, but the point is to either tell people to do that or to encourage them to do it. And I'm saying in a couple of years, we might have an opportunity to reflect back and see, gee, we should have done one thing or the other. I don't know. I'll look to my colleagues before we leave this point, though, but do you have more comments you want to make, Councilor McGuire?
Sorry, let me.
Probably.
Yeah, my next comment was about the 2-meter setback from the front building line for additional stories, and just trying to understand. We've had buildings that have had additions put up on them that haven't had a 2-meter setback. So just what's the advantage of the 2-meter setback? Why 2 meters? More information on that one.
I can go. I think just 2 meters based on previous experience kind of helps maintain that pedestrian human scale feel of a neighborhood when you add something above it. So when it's set back 2 meters, the eye doesn't see it immediately. So you still understand, for example, a 2-story building as a 2-story building, even though it may be 6 stories, but the eye doesn't notice that as much. So the character and the kind of low-rise feel of a streetscape is better maintained that way.
Is there anything that would limit, like we've got buildings of different heights and different like walls where there used to be a building the same size beside it, but it's been lost in a fire or something? Is there anything that would stop a building from infilling in a way that matches the buildings on either side of it?
You clarify your question.
So if you've got, say you've got 2 tall buildings and then you've got one that's lower and they want to add a story to it, would they have to put a 2-meter setback on that, or can they just match the setbacks and the size on either side of the building?
I think generally we've recommended including a setback to contributing buildings. If it's so you're saying it's a 1-story contributing building that wants to add a 2nd story?
Sure, for example.
Yeah, I think then we would still, if it's contributing, we would recommend stepping it back, because anything that is contributing typically contributes to the streetscape. For a non-contributing building, there's a little bit more flexibility there, and that would typically get addressed during the permit process.
Okay. When we look at in section 4.4.2.2 materials, we've got guidelines that use materials that are complementary to the character of the HCD. And I'm wondering, again, is this not better as a policy? Because I think of neighboring communities where, especially chains and businesses, where they get a much higher level of surface treatments when they do their developments than we get in Smith Falls. And if we only have this as a guideline, will those developments be able to keep using the lowest quality materials and the lowest quality finishes that they've been using in the past?
This section in particular is related to additions to non-contributing properties. So recognizing that they are not, contributing to the overall character of the HCD, I think the decision was made to include it as a guideline, just because the approach that we've kind of taken with this HCD plan is to be a little bit more hands-off with non-contributing buildings. So I think I would leave it up to council to decide whether the material requirements for additions to non-contributing buildings should be a policy or a guideline.
So
you want to see it as a policy?
Yeah, and my examples would be, say, the Tim Hortons in Perth versus the Tim Hortons in Smith Falls, the Shoppers Drug Mart in Newcastle versus the Shoppers Drug Mart in Smith Falls. I think if, even though these buildings are non-contributing, if we don't set the expectation that they're going to be complementary, then we lose a lot of the power of this policy in new development.
Comments from my colleagues? I'm going to go back to my other comment earlier, Councilor McGuire. This is just my opinion, and committee will decide. It's just that I think that it's the earlier comments was that we were comfortable leaving them, the earlier comments and guidelines, and not putting it into policy. And in a couple of years, when we've had more experience, we could adjust it at that time, but that's just my personal opinion. So Councilor McGuire is suggesting that on these complementary buildings, that the finishing materials should be policy and not guidelines. So I'm just turning to my colleagues, and Santec as in their draft has suggested guidelines and not policy. So Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I agree with Chair as a guideline, and I think that the examples given, i.e. Tim's and Shoppers, if they have a guideline, I would fully expect them to respect that. So yeah, I think that as a guideline, it's fine.
I'll just ask some other comments before I go back to you, Councilor McGuire, if that's okay. Councilor Quinn.
I agree that I think we need to get in and get working on this and see what comes of everything. We're not sure yet. So if we put it in there as a guideline, not a policy, that gives us some options to sort of play with things. Don't make it set in stone right now. Let's see how things happen. You never know what we'll find as we move forward. So let's not lock the doors just yet. Let's keep our minds open. Let's see how it goes for a year or two. We could come up with all kinds of experiences that are going to show us things differently than what we're even thinking now. So.
Councilor Robinson.
Thanks. I'm in agreement with that. Let's accept the guideline approach for now. And then if we need to change that, like future council can take care of that.
And this is on the complementary buildings. It's not on the, what's the term? The main.
Yeah, this is for non-contributing buildings. For contributing buildings, it's a lot more stringent for additions and the type of materials that are used.
Okay. Mayor Panka.
Yeah, Chris, maybe you can give me an example where this could arise. So in other words, a non-conforming building was going through X. We either provide a guideline, that's what we would prefer to see, or we provide.
Yeah, for sure. If we think of, let's use the Rexall, for example. If the Rexall wanted to, redo its whole entrance, it's a non-contributing building, so it would not be required to use traditional materials like stone or brick in kind of the refacing. There's a bit more flexibility with kind of the approach that they want to use. So that would be the guideline where they're not required to use these more historic styled materials, but it's recommended that they use it to be more compatible with the surrounding area. For contributing buildings, if we think of something like, say, the council chambers where we are now, if you want to put an addition to the outside to build, say an outhouse, for example, it would need to be compatible with the surrounding building in materiality and in terms of style. So that's the requirement for the contributing building of Town Hall, but not a requirement for the Rexall.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess as much as I would love to see a non-contributing having to somewhat mirror the requirements of the contributing buildings, my fear is that it would stand as a barrier. And there's certain projects that would not get done, or improvements may not get done. I think if we had a guideline with the possibility of an incentive through the CIP, there's probably a greater possibility of that getting done. So I think it's how we communicate our preference as a guideline, that's not a policy. I mean, I could respect where you're coming from, Councilor McGuire. I think in an ideal situation, that would get us to where we'd like to be in 10 or 20 years, as improvements would occur along the streetscapes. But I just don't want to be that overburied.
Okay, last word to you, Councilor McGuire. You wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, I guess just huge missed opportunity here because these developments are happening in communities all around Ontario that are very similar to Smith Falls. So why we're not demanding the same standard that they can demand next door, it makes no sense to me, and why we wouldn't want that higher quality standard in our downtown it doesn't make any sense to me. So to keep it as a guideline, we've got this strong CIP program that we've passed tonight. We've got lots of examples that are really easy to find from driving around. And once again, Smith Falls is deciding, no, we don't want to use this tool at our fingertips to make our downtown better. Because I think if we set the expectation at the beginning, before the development comes, that's when it's easiest to make the decision. And when we're trying to get things after the fact, we've lost control of the site plan control process. We've lost a lot of the planning tools we used to have for this stuff. This is a tool we still have that we can use, and we're choosing not to use it. So that's all I'll say about that.
I think you're hearing agreement that we all want this as the standard. It's whether we're going to use a hammer through a policy to do it, or encourage and CIP and other ways of getting it done. And if in a couple of years that doesn't seem to be working, we can up it is what the response is. We all want the same and share the same passion for the streetscape that you do. It's just how we go about getting it. Christian, you had your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do that, but I just want to clarify the difference between the additions to non-contributing buildings and the material requirements for new buildings. New development is subject to more strict building material requirements. I think in here we have brick, and brick is a primary cladding material, and secondary materials on rear facades. I think that the clarification is that when new development comes in, we want to be able to kind of shape that and guide that to kind of be compatible with the surrounding. With an addition to a non-contributing building, that's where it's more of, we're not trying to create a false sense of history with these buildings that are already there. We're just trying to kind of manage change gently with those ones, so that they are compatible with the surroundings, but they're still distinctly almost non-contributing. But when we are looking at new construction, we're looking at, for example, your Tim Hortons that is, nicely designed and compatible with the surroundings. So it's putting more of a requirement at the beginning of a design project rather than putting the design requirement on an addition to something that already exists. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So the committee has reached, majority of us have reached that we're comfortable with the recommendation on this for those non-contributing buildings and keeping it in the guidelines. So we could move on if there's anything else. Are there any other topics?
Yeah, so in the lighting section, Christian, we've talked in the past to the committee about different types of lighting. Is that something that's better dealt with in the sign bylaw as we've talked about other issues?
Yes, I think, like we've discussed, I don't think banning specific types of lights is best suited for this document. I think this document should be very heritage focused, and focused on kind of the history and the design. Lighting and signage is almost a bit more of a transient thing, but is more specifically associated with a specific bylaw.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. In sorry, I'm just going to my next comment here.
I am encouraging you to move along, Councilor Blair.
Yeah, my apologies. I'm just trying to scroll through the document to make sure we're not missing anything. Christian, what's the process for amending the HCD? Is it a public meeting and through council, or how does that?
Yeah, I think Carl spoke to that briefly earlier. There's no, the OHA hasn't defined a formal process as of yet, but it would require public meeting and council approval for changes.
Sounds good. All right, I appreciate everyone's patience with my my list tonight, and that is the end of it.
Discussion. Thank you very much, Christian and Carl, and all the work of everyone on this for the last couple of years. And this we know will come forward the next couple of weeks. And sometime in 2026, we'll see the follow-up to a signed bylaw or any ripple effects the adoption of this has on other policies. Thank you so much, everyone. It was great discussion. Appreciate it. So we're at, thank you, Carl. 10.4, Director Clark's going to enlighten us with community grants. And thank you to whoever produced the large.
That was
We have the large sheets for those of you online.
Very fine print.
Yeah.
I was thinking about getting you magnifying glasses, but figured that would be maybe not the best. You can zoom in if you have it on your laptop. So Carrie Barlow, who's watching at home, I think this evening she was the genius behind putting this report together. So I just want to extend my appreciation for that. I'm here this evening again before you with the Community Grants Allocation Report. This report was prepared on behalf of the Allocation Committee, as I said, by Carrie Barlow. Our Community Development Coordinator, who I'm very excited, is now a part of my department. And I just a big shout out for that. We're very excited that she's moving over in the coming weeks to the arena offices. As this falls within my department portfolio now, I will be here waxing poetic, hopefully briefly, about the community grants. So the committee received a total of 23 eligible applications, 26 total, 23 eligible this year. The total allocation currently recommended by the committee by way of this report is $219,190, which is just shy of the expected $220,000, which is 1% of our taxation that we've set in past. And next week, of course, any applicant requesting 10,000 or more will be presenting to council. That's correct, right, Clerk Costello? 12? Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. And this evening, I'm seeking direction, as you see in the report, for your approval of the recommended list of grant recipients that are outlined in the appended document that you have identified. And I look forward to your questions.
Comments, questions, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. And I'm really happy to see this report. And we discussed this years and years ago, and 1% would be allocated. And I think that these applications are excellent. I think we're getting a lot of bang for our buck and helping the community. I support this report 100%.
Thank you, Mayor Panko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Clark. I think when we develop these policies, we have the right intentions, and I think there's times that interpretation can potentially leave somebody on the outside looking in for reasons that are maybe outlined in the policy, but realize certain degree of subjectivity. And I'm referring to Pivotal Help. Mm-hmm. And I did hear from them, and I asked for some clarifying information. And the rejection was based on the indication that grants not be considered for services that are provided by other government agencies or not-for-profit organizations currently servicing the community. And I guess the reason Pivotal Help actually was born is it emerged out of the gaps in the system. That the number of people locally who were not getting access to the mental health supports that they sought, or the wait times were so excessive, or the cost was such a barrier. And so Pivotal Help emerged in the pandemic to try and help fill those gaps. And it'd be really unfortunate that they not be able to help to provide that help in Smiths Falls. As they applied last year and they were turned down based on the money not being concentrated or focused exclusively on Smiths Falls. This year, I think they redid their application, saying we would provide this funding to support people resident in Smiths Falls. And I think if I look at other applications, which I'm very supportive of, like rural FASD, I would say there's probably resources in the community as well, which support people who are benefiting from rural FASD. Same with a hospice hub, there might be some systems that are there to support, but not in the same way. And I would probably put Pivotal Help in the same category as some of those other agencies out there that are trying to fill gaps in the system as Pivotal Help is. So I appeal to my colleagues here, and I think there's enough room within the budget to recognize the role and the benefit they play. I think we all understand the mental health crisis. We've appealed to the province for greater support for our community, our broader community, delegations. And here we have an organization which is devoted, a not-for-profit, I should say, devoted to try and help fill this gap and provide help to people in our community. And because of, I guess, the policy we created or the interpretation of the policy, they're left on the outside looking in and not able to help the people in our community. So I guess I feel like my colleagues here to, I guess, reconsider it. Only, other than that, I'm fully supportive of everything else that's here. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the number with what has been recommended from staff, there's still about the $9,000 they're seeking.
So from my understanding, if we're looking at a recommendation of 219,190, that's only slightly less than the 220,000 that
Okay.
we're. So we would have to, we certainly could reconsider
Adjustments.
it. We'd have to make some adjustments across, and that might impact other people's allocations if council was interested in looking at that.
So that'd be certainly my preference. So other than that, I'm supportive of every other approval.
Can I just come back to that? I just want to know if the council is supporting of the recommendations that are here, and then we'll talk about the one that the mayor raised. Is there general support for staff's recommendation on the 219 and on the agencies that have been approved? Yes, okay, so that's okay. So now there's this exception, and C.O. Morris wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, for purposes of clarity, just draw everyone's attention to the dashed line on page 3. So everything below the dashed line is not included in the 219,000 being recommended.
Right.
So we have 3 that were ineligible, so clearly staff are not recommending those. But the last, the 4th one from the bottom scored the lowest, so we excluded it in order to remain within the budget of 220,000. So if there are any alterations, if anything is added, we would exceed the budget. And in terms of the Pivotal Health, I don't have the evaluations with me. Do you? Yeah.
We didn't score them.
My recollection is that one of the scoring elements within the matrix is the number of people impacted. And I believe this one was quite small. So, and not to diminish the importance of it, it's simply a quantity, not necessarily a quality metric. And so it scored lower, or it would have scored lower on that one because it affected a relatively small group of people.
Mayor Panker?
Yeah, I'm looking at their website, I guess, and the information they provided to me. It's a lot of the agencies out there are providing 1 or 2 or 3 counseling sessions because of the workload and the volume they're dealing with. They too tend to stay with someone longer to ensure they're sort of getting from where they are to where they need to be. So I guess the impact may not be as broad what I suggest is probably much deeper than people are getting maybe from other resources.
So we have agreement, Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, I appreciate this. I confess, I don't know anything about Pivotal Health and where they're based, and I see the work they do is excellent, but I have to, and I'm more than willing to listen to a delegation from them. And as the mayor knows, and other councillors have been here for a while, we try to take preferences out of this and leave the policy. I think the policy is going to find and it's good. And so I have faith in staff, but I'd be more than willing to hear from that organization and what they do and have a look at the application. I haven't seen it, so but overall, I still support staff recommendation on this item.
So all right, we're clear that we've got agreed on all of the ones that have been recommended. My comments on the mayor's suggestion is I actually agree with staff that the province has just invested millions in the mental health system here locally in our community, unlike hospice. So very, very different comparison. And there are gaps, and I would encourage, I appreciate their passion, but I've seen this over a 30 or 40 year career in health and social services where people go out and try to create a service to meet a need without a broader system view, and maybe they have that. I think that's an ideal reason or a quite defendable reason to say, no, we don't want to support another mental health organization that's coming in at the local level because the province is funding it. There are gaps, but if every time there was a gap, we created a new agency. That's why we have thousands of agencies, and the system is operating in a dysfunctional way. It contributes to that. I would rather see our system improve and fill those gaps through the provincial funding than at the local level try to fill holes. It sounds harsh because there's real people's lives affected, and I'm sure they do admirable work. It's just there is a system look at this, and I agree with the staff recommendation that it's already funded. It's not perfect, but it's a provincial responsibility here. And I hear your passion all the time, and on this one, I just can't. I can't align with it. So I wouldn't even encourage them to come and do a presentation to us. I think other than promoting, if it helps promote their service to the broader public, but not in a way of changing my mind. So that's just my personal view. I don't know, the council, would you like to ask staff or invite them here to perhaps revisit and adjust the budget so that they can receive some funding? And I'll ask the committee what they would like to do. Councillor Quinn.
I have to agree with what you're saying, and I think it is dysfunctional. So I'm not sure that this money is going to make things any better. I think we need to work very hard at getting our mental health strong, in place, and I don't think a little bit of money from the town of Smith Falls is going to be what's going to make it happen. I think this has to be the province, it has to be the country. I think that's where it has to come from, and we need a good, solid, strong base. And then if they get that and it's functioning properly in the way we would like it to, then you know what? If they came and asked for a bit of funding here and there to help them with specific things happening locally, I could change my mind and say for sure. But I think the whole structure is very fragile, and I think it needs to be.
Would you like them to come and make a presentation to council?
No, not right now. Let's no.
Councillor Robinson.
Thanks. Sort of torn here, but I think I'm going to side with Councillor McKenna and Councillor Quinn. It's nothing against the organization, but I trust staff, and if I don't want to get that involved in overriding their recommendations based on a formula that we gave them the authority to use. So in this case, I'm going to agree with Councillor McKenna and Councillor Quinn.
Any thoughts, Councillor McGuire?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess I've got issues still with the policy as it operates, because I'm trying to understand why the scores range from high 80s to 33%, and something that scores at 33% still meets the funding criteria. And I'm not sure how a juicing and vegetarian health class, I just don't understand how that meets the objectives of what we were originally trying to do with this. I've also got issues with the Chamber of Commerce Rib Fest, where we have a bunch of out of town food trucks come in. The restaurants are quieter for that weekend. It's a for-profit event. A lot of people make a lot of money off that event, and I don't understand why the fees for them setting up can't cover the operating costs for the event. So overall, my issues with are policy based. I don't have anything to say that the policy wasn't applied the way it should be applied, but I don't see value in all of the things that meet the eligibility criteria for funding. And I don't have enough information on the Pivotal Health to know, if it, so I guess I'm still not happy with this policy as it exists, but in the past, this has been the consensus of council. So
the question is, would you like that Pivotal Health? Would you like to learn more? Would you like them to come and make it as a delegation?
I would like more information on the review process and how it was reviewed, but at this time, I don't think we need a delegation. I think we could do that offline.
And Pivotal Health doesn't need an invitation from us to come as a delegation. They can be more than welcome if they go through the process. So it sounds like we have support for the staff recommendation and the 219,000, and thanks staff, and Pivotal Health is always welcome to come.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any committee, board, or external organization updates? None. No correspondence, no notice of motions. Recommended motion to adjourn our meeting at 7:08. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Welcome to this meeting of Smith Falls Town Council for Monday, January 5th, 2026. I'll call the meeting to order first with our land acknowledgement. On January 5th, 2026, we acknowledge that sacred land in which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, be mindful of generations to come. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:13 p.m. The agenda approval is with Councillor McGuire, please.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna that the January 5th, 2026 regular council meeting agenda be approved and circulated.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McGuire, second by Councillor McKenna, that the January 5th, 2026 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated. All in favor? Carried. As for disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest or general nature thereof. Something went wrong. See none. Our approval of minutes is with Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robinson. The minutes of December 15th, 2025 council meetings be approved as circulated.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Robinson. The minutes of the December 15th, 2025 council meetings be approved as circulated. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Any reports or updates? Nothing. None myself, other than we're all happy to be here in 2026. Looking forward to a great year. Lots of work to do as we enter the final calendar year of this term of council, even though we're already in the last year of term of council. It's just been a real pleasure working with everybody here. So I have no presentations, no proclamations. We have consent agenda. Sorry, no consent agenda, but we have two motions to look after. The first one's with Councillor Quinn, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls direct the clerk to sign the contents proof of loss from the intact public entities to authorize the release of supplement funds to the Town of Smith Falls in the amount of $574,198.87 as presented in Committee of Whole Report 2026-003.
Further comments, Councillor Quinn?
This is moving forward with our fire loss that we had, and this is for the contents that were in that building. So now we can move forward and start to rebuild the contents. This is for the contents. We will be working on the building.
Thank you. Any further? Moved by Councillor Quinn, seconded by Councillor Robinson. The Council of Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls direct the clerk to sign the contents proof of loss form from intact public entities to authorize the release of settlement funds to the Town of Smith Falls in the amount of $574,198.87 as presented in Committee of the Whole Report 2026-003. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And our bylaw is with Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Robinson that a bylaw to adopt amendments to bylaw 10386-2022, being a bylaw to adopt a community improvement plan for the Town of Smith Falls, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor Robinson. A bylaw to adopt amendments to bylaw 10386-2022, being a bylaw to adopt a community improvement plan for the Town of Smith Falls, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? That's carried. Discussion, Councillor?
Yes, thank you. We last discussed this in November, and as noted in the bylaw's name, this was a bylaw adopted in 2022. So there's about 6 areas that were reviewed, and staff are recommending amendments. And they sought input from the ministry, the public, and council, and back in November and earlier. And these amendments are a direct result of that consultation. There's a real focus on improving the CIP program to improve accessibility, both external to the building and internal, and on affordable housing, and using this tool of CIP to improve both those areas. So these amendments focused on those.
Thank you. Any further comments? We have a third reading, please.
Again, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to adopt amendments to bylaw 10386-2022, being a bylaw to adopt a community improvement plan. The town of Smith Falls may now read a third time, finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10658-2026.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McKenna, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to adopt amendments to bylaw 10386-2022. In a bylaw to adopt a community improvement plan for the town of Smith Falls, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10658-2026. All in favor?
First bylaw of the year.
That's carried. Here we go. Thank you. Okay, any inquiries or announcements? Councillor Quinn.
I have an inquiry. I've had, as this evening, I've had someone inquire as to why they can't get on the TV to watch our council meetings. It's a bingo on there tonight. And he says this happens quite often where you'll look at the schedule and say the council meeting will be such and such a time, and it's not there. So I'm just inquiring, can we look into that? Can we see if it can get streamlined and so people can watch council? I mean, we want them watching. We want them knowing what's going on. So just an inquiry.
Well, thank you. We may not look
live, you mean?
It doesn't necessarily have to be live, but he was trying to get into it tonight live, and it's a bingo game. So just
so.
Well, it's live streamed on our YouTube channel, and it's live streamed on our Facebook page. I'm not sure. I can't say
Your
for
TV.
certain if it's replayed on your TV or not, but it's live streamed and
Okay.
kept on our social media feeds.
We'll find out. We definitely don't want to get between bingo players and their opportunity to win the jackpots, right? So we won't try and overrule that. We'll try and make sure we fill in the gap somewhere so people can see it.
I think he was just really looking to see if we couldn't have a schedule that was posted that was real, you know, so we need.
I suspect that it's replayed, but I don't know exactly when.
Well, if they're on our social media feeds, they can watch it Mondays at 5 p.m. Or it's in our history, so they can always go back and watch previous meetings, as well as all of our previous meetings are on our YouTube channel.
That's his name.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have no confirmatory bylaw. We do adjournment with Councillor Robinson.
What a surprise. Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan that council adjourn its proceedings at 7:19 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Brennan. This council adjourns proceedings at 7:19 p.m. and stands so adjourned to the next duly called meeting of council. All in favor? We are adjourned. Happy New Year, everyone.